My greetings to all the friends who are listening from listening to me, say in this on this occasion from different countries, and also to Ambedkar King Study Circle for inviting me to speak in this on this occasion, say regarding peasant farming or farmers farming versus corporate farming. And of course, I also thank all the organizations who are part of this, program. Well, all of you know already that, say, an historic struggle of farmers against BJP-led Modi government has entered 28th day, almost a month. And it is very, very tragic that that the government has made them suffer in very severe cold in northern India, especially around Delhi. And so many women, children are also part of this struggle. All of them are made to struggle in this severe cold. Well, government has converted this into a battle. The farmers wanted to come and agitate and convey their feelings, and they wanted the government to listen to them and change according to the situation which is driving the farmers for this struggle. But the government has converted this into a battle. They are using border security force. They are using rapid action force. And also they are digging trenches on roads. It is as if, say, they are waging a war against some enemy, say from on some enemy. Now, because of all these atrocities heaped by the government, it is not only a struggle for farmers for survival, and it has taken many dimensions. To say, it has become a struggle for democracy itself against a fascistic authoritarian government. And say, with agricultural workers, then industrial working class, unorganized workers, and various other sections of people joining this struggle, it has become a struggle for, say, struggle of all the people against this government. Well, say, these acts, with 3 farm acts plus electricity act that the government has promulgated as ordinances, is not affecting only farmers. Actually, they are affecting the entire village population, whoever is depending on agriculture. It may be artisans, and besides artisans and so many other sections of people living in the villages, besides farmers and agriculture workers. It is also affecting more than 12 billion kirana stores, that is small stores which procure vegetables and fruits or even food grains and sell in various cities. It's a death knell to them also. Then the roadside vegetable and fruit vendors, they're mostly very, very poor women. And there are several lakhs of them. It affects them. And then it also affects lakhs and lakhs of other people. And engaged in this agricultural trade. There, say India has second largest number of farms, agricultural farms in the whole world. It's about 24% or 1/4 of agricultural farms of the whole world. Whole world, it is having about say 470 million, and in India it is 124 million or something like that. And it is next only to China, which is having 35% of the farms of the whole world. And this is the huge number with which, say, the Modi's or this government of India has is trying to drive them away from villages, you can say. It's a very huge population, not only for India, for the whole country. It is 24% of the farms of the whole world. And say this huge number, in this huge number, more than 80% are farms with less than 2 hectares. Therefore, they are very small and marginal farmers, and very few of them are, say, middle farmers and rich farmers also. But all of them are affected by this law. All the strata of farmers are affected by this laws. And now, because of such a huge number in India, you see the peasant farming, or as it is called in the academic circles as peasant question, is a world historic question. It has been inherited from the times of feudal order of kings and nobles. Said this question of peasants, how to deal with peasant agriculture, and how to increase their productivity, how to engage them in production, all this is a kind of world historic question. And say how to deal with this question. The world, or you can say the human society, has seen 3 paths of solving this question. 3 paths. One is a democratic path. The other is the corporate path. Then the third one is the socialist path. All these 3 paths are in vogue in the world in various countries, and but predominantly in most of the countries, this corporate path is the predominant path. And here in India, say after Modi government came to power, and especially during this corona crisis, health crisis, the Modi government is pursuing this corporate path in a most aggressive manner, and therefore it has become a big struggle between the corporates and the government on one side, and then the peasants or farmers, and then the farming, all other farming community, and the whole people of India, as I was saying, including the working class. Well, so since 1991, after the introduction of the liberalization, privatization, and globalization policies in India, private sector has, especially the big corporates, have invaded and occupied a number of fields of, say, economy. It is whether it is services like health, education, transport, construction, various other things. And now, say, they are they were all these days, they were casting their greedy eyes to look towards agriculture and to engage in agriculture and try to profit from agriculture since 1991. They were greedy to see that all this agricultural trade is also occupied by them, or you can say invaded by them. With the able assistance of Modi government, now they are determined to invade and occupy agriculture. I am using these words, invading and occupation. This is the situation, you can say, in the country. It is almost like an enemy occupying a territory. And then the speculative finance capital of the whole world and corporates from US, Europe are also ready to pounce on this farming community and trying to occupy, say, with huge funds. Well, say, if you just, I would like to refer to some instances of this, what is happening in the other parts of the world besides India. You see, lakhs and lakhs of acres in Africa, Latin America, and even Australia, Eastern Europe, Russia, especially the Siberian part. A number of corporates are trying to purchase or lease in or do various other means of trying to occupy or own and operate farms, lakhs of acres. It is said that since the past, say, one decade or so, more than 30 million hectares of land has been, has gone to these land grabbers from other countries, other than the country to which this land belongs. Mostly it is in Africa, but to some extent in Latin America, and even in Australia and Eastern Europe, as I was telling you. And in this, actually, this finance capital and the big corporates of US and Europe are engaged, and even the Arab countries flush having this petro dollars, they are also engaged in this kind of land grabbing around the world. And on India, there was a pressure was mounting since the past few years from these corporates of US and Europe through their governments to liberalize the land, to liberalize agriculture, so that they will have enough scope to occupy the Indian agriculture or Indian agricultural land. Well, the Indian corporate giants have also had their guns ready for the this occupation or invasion of Indian agriculture. Say, in Canada, there is a proverb which says people have been invited for the dinner. People, friends and relatives have been invited for the dinner in big number. Masala is ready. Masala for cooking, say, various non-vegetarian dishes is ready. And now only one thing is the slaughter of the animal. And that's how these corporates have already ready for occupying agriculture since the past few years. The masala is ready, and now the peasant is to be sacrificed in the or slaughtered. That is the situation that is coming up. Many corporates in agriculture have made preparations to for this say invasion or occupation of Indian agriculture. Say, though there are so many corporates who are say battle ready, let me give only the examples of two crony capitalists referred to by our friend who introduced, say, this topic now. Say, that is Ambani and Adani, who are the right hand and the left hand of our Prime Minister. They helped Modi to immensely, say, in coming to power, and they are also continuing to help him to expand the power base of BJP. They are again unleashing a blitzkrieg kind of propaganda in each of the states where they are not in power, with the help of the funds from these cronies. And this kind of thing is going on. Just now it is going on in Bengal, and recently it was in Hyderabad. Many such, say, the BJP central government trying to occupy the states in which they are not in power. This kind of efforts are going on. And it is in this context where these cronies are helping them in a very big manner to come to power and expand their power base. This so we have to see these acts. And say Reliance and owned by Ambani has established a number of companies to cover many aspects of agriculture production and trade. Reliance Agro Agency, say they have established a company long back called Reliance Agro Agency to supply agricultural inputs like fertilizer, pesticides, seeds, herbicides, and various other chemicals for agriculture. Then they have Reliance Money to supply credit to the farmers, those farmers who do not get institutional credit from banks and cooperatives, especially the small marginal farmers and things like that. They have this also ready, Reliance Money. Then they have Reliance General Insurance. Reliance General Insurance is also a company which has been selected by the government of India to insure crops in 22 states of India. And of course, this belongs to his brother Anil Ambani. Then they have Reliance Agro Distribution Company. Then they have Reliance Farms. And recently, say in the past, say a few years, 2-3 years, they are trying to engage themselves in precision farming. And for this precision farming, they are trying to use the most advanced technology, trying to develop an autonomous tractor. Say recently, in the past, say few years, say Reliance is trying to enter into precision farming, for which, say, they are developing an autonomous tractor in collaboration with, say, multinational companies and also multinational companies like Bosch, and then Escorts, which is a famous tractor and farm implement producer in India. They are also trying to use drones, remote sensing, artificial intelligence, and various other technologies coming up. And so they have also started in 2006 itself a company called Reliance Retail. And this Reliance Retail has one of the arms called Reliance Fresh for vegetable, fruits, and even food articles, food commodities to be sold. And this Reliance Retail has more than 1,100 outlets in the whole country, and it is developing very fast. Therefore, they might have added a few hundreds more by now. And then they have also entered into collaboration with Facebook for this precision farming. Of course, you know, Facebook has WhatsApp, and this WhatsApp has very vast network of more than 430 million users in India. And Facebook has acquired 9.9% of minority stake for $5.7 billion. Of course, in India, it is largest ever investment for minority stake, such a minority stake. And Google has also acquired about 4.5% of stake in Reliance Empire. Well, you can see how all these giant corporates are combining together, and they are. That's why I told you they are battle ready. They have kept their ammunitions, and they are trying to develop few more ammunitions, and so that they can occupy the farmers' lands. Say those ammunitions are something like an app called GeoKrishi. It's also a company. It's an app called GeoKrishi, and they want to tie up with this WhatsApp and have lakhs and lakhs or millions of WhatsApp groups. Millions of WhatsApp groups in the whole country consisting of farmers, so that they can engage with these farmers and try to purchase from them and various other things. They are also having a new company called GeoMart. So this GeoMart is another new venture which whose slogan is from farm to fork in 24 hours. From farm they will produce, they will procure, and if necessary, do some processing and packing, and then reach the consumer in 24 hours. Say this is the type of agri-business they would like to expand in this very fast pace. And for this, the Reliance has entered into agreements with several state governments in India, and they are trying to engage several other state governments in India so that they can engage, expand their business exponentially. Say they have sounded Karnataka government at some point of time to purchase 50,000 acres and spread over all taluks. Taluk means, you can say, counties. All taluks in our state Karnataka. And then they also would like to have 5 lakh acres through contract farming. This is the scale in one state. And they have already entered into such agreements in Punjab and various other states. So they have, from our own state, using this, farmland, they if and when they are able to own this 50,000 acres and get 5 lakh acres in contract farming. Say they would like to have 10 cargo freights every week from Karnataka to lift all these, say, agricultural produce, including fruits and vegetables. So this is the kind of, say, the scale with which, say, they would like to enter agriculture, and that's why I am calling them battle ready for occupation. And say they have also recruited 1,500 agriculture graduates. Besides various other graduates, they have engaged they have employed 1,500 agriculture graduates for this purpose. And similarly, Adani also is battle ready. Though there are so many other companies of Reliance, I am say concentrating on the major things. Of course, his expansion in telecom sector through Jio is a very major development in his arms or armory, so that he can engage with Facebook, WhatsApp, and then try to get as a farmers into his fold. Of course, then the Adani has 22 and odd agri-tech companies. And out of these 22, 21 of only, he had only one before 2014, before say this BJP Modi government came to power. He had only one. And during these 6 years, he has more than 22 companies. And out of these 22 companies, about 10 of them have been established only in last year, that is 2019. You can see the hurry and the frenzy with which both Reliance and Ambani and Adani, they are getting their ammunitions and armory ready. Well, Adani also has an agreement with the very giant public sector company called Food Corporation of India for constructing very large silos which will have lakhs of tons of food grains stored in them. And in these huge silos, say, after storing the grains in these huge silos, he is also engaged in procuring the food grains. He has entered into agreement with this corporation for procurement of food grains and also transport of food grains from one place to another in India. And for that, he has acquired 10 rakes of goods trains. That is 10 large contingent of goods trains. And he is also constructing railway roads itself towards these silos and various other, like this Ambani and Adani also, but there are many other corporates like Tata, Birla, ITC, that is Indian Tobacco Company, then Pepsi Company, and Amazon, and various other companies who are also getting their arms and armory ready, though not to this extent. They are in various degrees, because they are also there in the business of this malls, say this giant food retail chains. All these companies have also have this retail chains in our country, like More, Big Bazaar, and in various other names. And therefore, because this Ambani, Adani, and various other companies have say, invested already so much of money as a preparation to enter into corporate farming, to acquire lands from the farmers in various ways. These ordinances had become very urgent. They were in a hurry to get this ordinance, get these laws passed. Therefore, they were promulgated as ordinances without any discussion in parliament or with any other stakeholders. They promulgated these ordinances in July itself. They could not wait for all this process of parliamentary session, discussion, and various other things. And even in parliament, in the parliamentary procedure, they have to usually all acts and bills pass through various parliamentary committees before being placed in the Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. And all these things they did away. All these things are delaying and they are not necessary. Therefore, because we are in a hurry, we would like to see these acts in place in a jiffy. Therefore, all these laws being vetted in all these committees was done away with. And then say they were not also discussed in these houses thoroughly after these ordinances being placed. You know about that history. They just ride roughshod in Lok Sabha because they have majority without much discussion or without any discussion, you can say, without proper discussion. They passed it in Lok Sabha. And in Rajya Sabha, where they don't have majority, when the MPs try to move amendments, when the MPs try to make these bills go to the parliamentary committees before coming to the parliament, like Joint Select Committee and various other committees, the government say, you know what the deputy chairman of the Rajya Sabha did. He just suspended those MPs and said, without even voting, he declared they have been passed by voice vote. This is the urgency with which they are trying to grab the land. And this, then how do these acts aid their land grab? Well, there are so many acts they are trying to bring. At the central level, they have passed 3 acts. And besides this, they have directed the state governments to amend the land reform clause. That is one very crucial aspect because it is done at the state level. Therefore, let me dwell on this Land Reforms Act. This Land Reforms Acts were, say, the legacy of India, the legacy of freedom struggle. During the freedom struggle, so many millions of farmers were up in arms because they were made as tenants, they were made as leaseholders. They did not own the land they were cultivating, and therefore they used to suffer in a very big way. Most of you might be knowing these things. And then the struggles erupted. Therefore, the Uluvane Holadodeya, as it is called in Kannada, that is, the person who is cultivating should be the owner of the land, not somebody who is absentee, who is not cultivating the land should be the owner. Only those persons who are cultivating should be the owners. Actually, the 1930s Great Depression of 1930s, you see, say a lot of farmers say fell into debt because of the crash in prices of agricultural produce in India also. And then at that time, millions of acres of land say shifted from farm hands to traders, merchants, money lenders, and various other things. Because of this history, after independence, the peasants in India started say movements for land reforms. Of course, prior to independence itself, there were very big struggles, even armed struggles like Telangana, which occupied, let's say, 3 districts and say it liberated farmers in 3 districts and distributed 1 million acres amongst themselves in one small part of India. And there were many struggles in various states during that time. But after independence, when the government of India did not say implement, they did not show any intention of implementing land reforms or bringing up land reforms, farmers and in India again struggled under the leadership of All India Kisan Sabha, and they all over the country in various states for land reforms. Finally, the government had to announce that they will bring land reforms. When the things were going out of hand, Nehru himself announced that he is going for socialistic pattern of government. And in that socialistic pattern of government, he included public sector in industries on one side, then land reforms on the other side. But finally, those efforts in 1955 and 60s did not bring much say benefits or did not give the land rights to the cultivator in India. And only in say 1974, in mid say 70s, when there was a very big food crisis and famine condition in India, Indira Gandhi she wanted to have green revolution, and in this context, say to bring about green revolution, the absentee landlords who are sitting in the towns and cities and trying to garner the agricultural produce through their hold on agricultural land, such a situation will not help green revolution. Therefore, the farmland had to be given to the cultivators. Therefore, she brought land reforms. Of course, it was having lot of inadequacies. It was not, say, intending to give the farmland to the cultivator in full extent. Only in 2 states where left was ruling, that is in West Bengal and Kerala, and to some extent in Tripura, there were any real land reforms. But in various other states, including Karnataka, there was some tinkering with land relations so that the absentee landlords are thrown away, and the landlords in the villages, they will get all a major chunk of the land. That is, the say big landholders in the villages, they got more benefits from these land reforms rather than the Dalit agricultural worker or Dalit bonded labor who was expecting some land so that he will become an independent producer and hold his head high in the villages and as a peasant, as a independent producer. That did not happen with this Land Reforms Act even in 1970s. But there was some tinkering. There was some tinkering of, say, of land reforms, you can say, in the form of these Land Reform Acts. And but this Land Reforms Acts, which came in 1970s, had 3 elements. Mainly, say one of them, or one of the crucial things, crucial element was no non-cultivator or agricultural person or company or group can purchase farmland. That is, a non-cultivator who is in, say, cities, not engaged in agriculture, say he cannot purchase farmland. Even, say, those who are already engaged in agriculture since long, if they have a non-farm income or non-agricultural income as the major income of their livelihood, they also cannot purchase land, new lands. This is the stringency with which this, say, acts treated, so that the cultivator remains the owner of the land and he can engage in intensified agricultural production practices like Green Revolution and produce more, so that India can become self-reliant in agriculture. Therefore, besides this, it also had a provision called tenancy laws, where the tenants are persons who have leased land from big landowners. They can become owners of the land through this tenancy laws. And in Karnataka, they abolished tenancy itself. Nobody can lease out agricultural land to somebody else. And only those persons who are owning it should cultivate it. If they do not cultivate it, then government can take over that land and distribute it to others who can cultivate. This is the provisions in tenancy laws, at least in some states like Karnataka. And then there were also ceiling laws. That is, a person can have only so much of land where his family is able to cultivate. And if they cannot, if they have large extent of land where that family cannot engage in, it is beyond their capacity to cultivate, then that land should be taken away by government and it should be distributed to the landless. That is the purpose of this ceiling laws. But they were not, especially the ceiling laws, were not implemented in real sense, and therefore in our state only 25,000 Dalit agricultural laborers got 1 lakh acres. That is the only extent that they benefited these landless. But if these ceiling laws were implemented effectively, like in West Bengal and Kerala, millions and millions of landless agricultural labor, Dalit agricultural labor could have got land, but it did not happen. So though many agricultural economists and statisticians predicted there will be millions and billions of acres available in the whole country to be distributed to the landless poor, no, it did not happen, because there were so many loopholes in the acts, so that the rich can retain the hold on their on the lands. And therefore, say, these land reforms acts are also being amended at state level, and in Karnataka it has been amended recently by our BJP government in our state. And what do these amendments to the Land Reforms Act mean? They have done away with these non-agricultural persons not able to purchase land. They have said anybody, any company, any trust, they can very easily purchase land if they want to purchase land. And this itself, gives a very big scope for these corporates and various other people to enter into agriculture And to give you one example, there is one, say, village about 50 to 60 kilometers from Bangalore, where there are more than 24 farms, as they are called now, farmhouses, owned by people living in Bangalore. Say the people living in Bangalore who are having some surplus money, they go and purchase farmlands, and they do not farm, they do not cultivate on those lands. They only go there in the weekends to spend their, luxury time. Therefore, say it is taken away from agricultural production, and it is not available for agricultural production, but it is only has become an orchard for spending time, weekends for the people in cities. And many have purchased these lands not to cultivate, but for many who would like to purchase these lands, not to cultivate, but to keep it with them so that they can sell when they get high prices, or they can convert that into residential areas and sell in for high prices. And that is another, another way how these farmlands will be taken away from agriculture. Then there is, say, this black money holders. Many who are corrupt, and both in business and politics and various other sectors of economy, say they black money, which is to evade tax. They would like to purchase farmlands and keep it with them so that, say, they can evade tax. And therefore, there are many such, say, things that can happen now with these amendments. But corporates like Reliance and Adani, they can purchase land in various nooks and corners of the country, or nooks and corners of our state. And besides that, the government of India has these 3 acts where, say, they say the contract farming is permissible now. Earlier I was saying that tenancy has been abolished. Therefore, only those people who are cultivating can own the land. But here, contract farming, does away with this kind of provision, and there the contract big corporates can have contracts with billions, lakhs and billions of for small farmers, and it is almost a modern type of slavery, you can say, for these farmers. All the inputs are supplied by the corporates, and they have to do only what is told by the corporates, and they have to sell it back to the corporates at the prices prefixed. Say, in India, there are some experiences already of this corporate farming in several parts of the country, and even in Karnataka. And these, say, in this contract farming, virtually this farmer who has entered into the contract with the big corporates, he will be reduced to a farm laborer, just a farm laborer who will do what the master tells him, and he will get some wages, and he may not get it also, because it happened. You might be knowing about a crop called gherkin, and they are kind of say cucumbers. In Western countries, it is much more popular than India. And say lakhs of acres of land was contracted in 3 or 4 states: Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Andhra, Telangana, and many Maharashtra and things like that. And these gherkin producers, they were exporting these gherkins to Europe. But what happened was, there was some competition from other countries, and the prices for gherkin fell in Europe. And say all of a sudden, these gherkin exporting companies, they just fled. They just disappeared. But the crop that was produced in the lands, what should the farmer do? And many times, if the prices drop in other parts of the world, then these corporates say, we cannot procure your say crop. We cannot produce your procure your purchase your produce. What we can, because the prices have dropped, we can give you half the price of what is contracted, or less than that, because the prices are produced. This is one way. Other way is, they say the quality is bad. There is a lot of water content in your produce. There are so many other loopholes, lacunae in your produce. Therefore, we cannot give you the price that is contracted, price which we have entered into a contract with you. So many such devices they will use, they are using. And in such a situation, the farmer cannot even go to courts. Actually, another aspect of these acts is, say, it says that the farmers cannot, the problem, anybody who is having problems with these acts, they cannot go to courts. They only some officials of the government who can be very easily bribed and bought over, say, they will deal with the complaints if there is any. That itself is a very big problem. And then it also says, anybody who is doing anything in good faith in implementing this act, even not even government officials, even private persons, cannot be sued. This is another provision, a very dangerous provision, not only for agricultural, not only in agriculture. This provision may extend its tentacles in so many other acts, and any person who is doing good in good faith can be beyond the control of law, beyond laws. So many such things can happen. And then, say, beside this contract farming, there is another act. We call it Hoarding Act. Actually, it is amendment to Essential Commodity Act. It is controlling this Essential Commodity Act is to control the amount of a particular food grain or food article which can be stored, how much one can store. Because earlier, a lot of black marketing was being engaged before this self-reliance in food production. A lot of black marketing was there. Merchants and traders, they were hoarding it. And by hoarding it, they would say just say create artificial scarcity and get the prices to rise, and then only they will sell. Such things were happening, and therefore this Essential Commodities Act came into being. And now, say the food articles, food grains, and some vegetables like potato and onion, then vegetable oils, say many such things have been taken away from this act, which means to say you can procure any amount and keep it any longer in your private, say, silos and godowns and various storage facilities, and create artificial scarcity and control the market, determine the prices in the market. Recently in India, it happened with pigeon pea or tur dal, as it is called in northern India, pigeon pea. And pigeon pea is a very essential ingredient for every household in large parts of the country. And the prices rose from 80 rupees per kg to 180 rupees all of a sudden. And these high prices reigned for more than 1.5 years, which meant several tens of thousands of crores of profit for a few. And one of those few was Adani. He was importing this pigeon pea from Africa. He stored it away from Indian shore. And only when the prices rose, that was released to the market at very high prices. And of course, few other corporates also profited from such hoarding. And like that, say the present scenario is that, say, huge corporates, they can purchase land on one side and enter into direct farming, large-scale production with most modern technology. Then they can enter into contract farming with millions of farmers and say, grab their produce at very low prices. Say that is the second way. Then they can purchase from independent producers also in very large scale and store to any extent in huge magnitude. Therefore, this kind of, say, situation is helping the big corporates to enter and say drive away farmers. Finally, the farmers will end up as employees there in these corporates, or they will come to the cities in a very big scale as migrant labor and work as construction workers. So this is the kind of scenario that is being built through these laws, and therefore, say this is a big struggle. It has become a big struggle where the millions of farmers try to retain their present livelihood, try to retain their present assets, which itself is very small, and this is on one side. Then the corporates trying to grab their land or grab their produce on the other side. Therefore, this is the struggle that's going on. And this kind of struggle has gone in, say, in European countries and also in, say, USA, Latin American countries. Say, this kind of struggle has already passed into very advanced stages, and a lot of corporate farming has happened. And what is happening there? First thing is environment. Environment gets affected in a very big way. Then, say, this farmers, independent producers will become agricultural laborers, or if if the wages are high, then they will bring migrant farmers or migrant labor from various countries, various regions, so that these, say, farmers who have become laborers, they may not get the proper wages also. And several such things, say, these corporates, say, when they control the market, the prices will rise. Therefore, not only the farmer, but the consumer he also gets affected in a very big way. This is the kind of situation that may arise. But then what is the solution? The solution, actually, the world has found many mechanisms for such solution. Cooperatives, producing cooperatives. Actually, Dr. Ambedkar, at the time of this Constituent Assembly, he gave a proposal to the Constituent Assembly when they were drafting this Constitution, Indian Constitution. Say they were, he made a proposal that the whole land to be nationalized in the whole country, and everybody engages in farming as a part of a cooperative. And therefore, even the biggest land holder or the landless, all of them, they will become, say, cultivators under the shelter of cooperative farming. And this would create equality in the society, and it will also give means of livelihood for everybody. This was the proposal by Dr. Ambedkar. And he was saying, even Soviet model is okay for me if it helps, say, to bring about equality in the country. And therefore, but this was not considered by the Constituent Assembly at that time. This model is there, cooperative production. And therefore, farmers can enter into, if the small farms are not viable, if the small farms cannot use very high technology, modern technology, then these farms can be combined in the form of agriculture producing cooperatives, and then they can cultivate using all the modern technology and mechanisms. This alternative is already there. Of course, the socialist say alternative is also there, as it operates in Cuba, China, Vietnam, and these three countries are present. This alternative is also there. But therefore, this democratic alternative, where people engage in agriculture as independent producers and combine their strength through cooperatives, and they control cooperatives, the small peasant themselves, they control the cooperatives. Such scenario, such option is there, or the socialist option is there. But the corporates, giant corporates around the world, they are trying to drive the whole agriculture in, say, the corporate democracies, as I would call it, or the democracies controlled by the big capitalists. Say they are trying to drive it in the path of corporate farming, and therefore this struggle in India now is a giant historic struggle, not only in India, not only for India, it is on the world scale, because India is having the largest number, second largest number of peasants in the present day scenario, according to FAO statistics. Therefore, what path for India? What path for these farmers? A democratic path where every cultivator will own a piece of land. Even the landless should be given the land by serious implementation of land reforms, especially this land ceiling laws. There are so many who are owning 500,000 acres even now in India, and therefore all that land which is very large should be taken over by the government and distributed to the farming, landless laborers who are engaged in farming day in and day out. It should be given to them, and that will also to some extent solve the social inequality in the form of this untouchability and caste system. Therefore, this is the democratic solution. Taking away the land from very large holders, distributing it to the poor peasants and landless agricultural laborers, who are mostly Dalits and other backward castes. And that way, that is the democratic reform. It happened in French Revolution. It happened even in England, and it happened even in Japan after occupation of America. In such a situation, this democratic way of solving this problem, the peasant question, is a historical challenge. A historical challenge for India, and it has implications for the whole world. Therefore, they said this democratic solution, giving land and even the government land, land under the control of the government, that also can be given to the landless agriculture labor, and all of them brought together as cooperatives, and therefore this democratic solution of cooperative farming, land to all cultivators, then cooperative farming against the corporate farming. This is the struggle that is going on, and say all of you in the different parts of the world, I seek your support, or the peasants and farmers of India seek the support from every corner of the world, so that they can move forward in this path, in this democratic path of cooperativization of agriculture rather than corporatization of agriculture. Okay, thank you. It's open for discussion.